Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with the midweek update in the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. Then of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the fastest growing industry in the US, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. So today we're going to start with this new Cannabis Ventures article from December 2nd. Now it's a little bit old, and so unfortunately I did miss it, but I think this is very positive for me to actually catch this and bring this in now, because despite the awful price action that we're seeing, which is more of the same, and it just tests us as investors, what I can share with this is that American cannabis sales stabilized in October according to BDSA data. And so this at least tells me that despite the price action, which again is not something we can control, the only thing we can control is how we react to that price action, I at least know that these cannabis companies are still supplying the demand and sales are strong enough for them to keep increasing their fundamentals, increasing their revenue over time, and their profitability quarter over quarter. And so for me, that's what's actually important, not the price action in the short term. So we're going to go through this Western markets. BDSA provides coverage for Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon. In October, growth ranged from -12 in Nevada to 28% in Arizona compared to a year ago. But as we can see, obviously Arizona has the most room for growth as it's the newest market. Total cannabis sales grew 28% to 114 million, with adult use representing 57.1 million, while medical cannabis sales fell 36% from a year ago to 56.9 million. But sequentially, overall growth increased 5%, with medical rising 2% and adult use growing 8%. So it is positive to see a jump up back there in Arizona. While in California, it did beat the previous month in September, and so sales increased 0.9% sequentially to 295.7 million. And then on to Colorado, the annual decline improved from 13.9% in September to 10.6% in October, as sales rose 0.5% sequentially to 180.1 million. While Nevada seems to be the state struggling the most, especially as the pandemic is lingering, written here in this article, sales fell 12.4% to 72.4 million, down 0.9% from September. And obviously, they must get a lot of their sales from tourism, and people are just skeptical with new information, new variants, and they're just avoiding travel. So not to say that this won't bounce back at some time, but that's likely why they're facing the most challenges. While Oregon, this was one of the stronger states in October, with 4 consecutive year-over-year declines, shifting to a gain of 1.4% in October, as sales advanced 5.7% sequentially to 99.9 million, up from what we saw in September. So that's positive out of Oregon. As we go to Eastern markets, just to add, Florida sales fell 6.4% sequentially to 149.1 million, while Pennsylvania sales rose 0.7% from September to 102.8 million. Michigan, which we previously detailed, saw overall sales increase 1.3% from September to 163.5 million, up 53% from a year ago. And that's pretty much it for the Eastern markets that don't have the graph along with it. Not exactly sure why, but that's just how they display it. But so from Illinois, combined adult use and medical cannabis sales rose 2.4% in October to 146 million, up 34.7% compared to a year ago. And we can see that at least, they're starting to trend upwards again, which is very positive, especially as Illinois is a newer market as well. Now, Maryland is the only one on this chart that is only medical use. It does not allow any adult use. So this market continued to slow, with annual growth rate declining from 6.7% in September to 3.6%, as sales rose sequentially month over month by 3.4% to 44.3 million for medical only in Maryland. While Massachusetts, 41% growth in October was up from 40% in September, as sales grew 3.3% sequentially to 147 million, but 41% year over year for October versus 40% year over year in September. So positive to see sales strong out of Massachusetts too. But this is the main thing I want to see. As long as they're heading back up from some, from some previous downtrend, that is healthy, because we know it just can't continue to just go up straight forever. Ideally, that would be great, but that's not sustainable. So just wanted to share that. So it is positive that these sales are strong across the board in more mature markets in the US. As we jump over to Stats Canada, we got the new retail trade sales by province and territory. And for October, we can see that Canada brought in a total of 364 million, up from 354 million in September. And so this just shows, again, the trend of heading upwards, likely because of the amount of stores that we're seeing open in Ontario. Our most populated province is definitely driving this change, up from June to now, 120 million, 126 million, 139 million, 141 million, 145 million. This is only because Ontario was opening 120 stores a month. Had that not happened, had that not been the case, we would not see this fast growth. So this just sort of highlights how in the US, we also need to see states, work with these companies and work with the industry and social equity entrepreneurs as well, and just mom and pop shops, small businesses, help everyone try and get more stores up and running, because more stores is what can drive more tax revenue, more sales, more jobs. So just wanted to highlight that, as that's definitely the biggest contributing factor in Canada. But as we can see, some of the other provinces, Alberta, the second most sales, went up from 60.6 million to 63. British Columbia from 49 up to 50. And while Quebec is actually our second most populated province, they're seeing so little growth because they just don't open stores. And that's it. It's as simple as that. So it's too bad, but just wanted to show you this, as Canada is trending upwards. So that is at least positive to see. And then on to this one from Prohibition Partners. Now, I just wanted to add this, that you can take a look at it if you want. But according to them, a highlight in their report, Prohibition Partners finds that combined global sales of CBD, so they're adding CBD now with medical and adult use cannabis, topped $37.4 billion in 2021 and could rise to US $102 billion by 2026. Now, hey, when I first got into investing, I was so into these new reports, like, oh my God, that's so cool. This is going to be such a massive industry, but it's so easy also year over year to just start adding a little bit to these figures and to try and catch new investors off guard to believing that, it's going to happen. So not to say that it won't, but you can see how now that they're adding CBD to it, they're just increasing the number of total sales, making it more appealing. So just wanted to show that this is here accessible to you if you wanted to grab it. Apparently this is a free global cannabis report. Obviously you got to pay for some more of the data, but you could post that down here. So just wanted to share that if anyone is interested. Not to say that it's inaccurate, but just, these reports do come out year over year, and typically we just see that the trend is heading upward. So it is positive overall for the entire industry, but just wanted to highlight that. But also thinking critically and taking in the information with a grain of salt, because although the more informed you are with accurate information, the better decisions you can make. This is also a lead magnet in order to get your emails, so then they can try and sell you on some of the more expensive data afterwards. So it's always good to know what you're getting. But on to this one from Forbes, as Pfizer bets on medical cannabis with a $6.7 billion acquisition. So I think the highlight out of this is that they paid $6.7 billion for what? And so Pfizer is to enter a medical cannabis industry betting on a promising cannabinoid-based bowel disease treatment. So as last week, American multinational pharmaceutical and biotechnology corporation Pfizer signed an agreement with the clinical stage company Arena Pharmaceuticals for total equity value of around $6.7 billion. Under the agreement terms, Pfizer acquires all shares for $100 a share in an all-cash transaction, and moreover, the press release reads that the proposed transaction will be subject to customary closing conditions, including receipt of regulatory approvals and approvals by Arena stockholders. While Arena Pharmaceuticals is a biotech company with a pipeline dedicated to cannabinoid-type therapeutics. So in my view, though, this is Pfizer saying that as of right now, they've just admitted that, yes, cannabis is a medicine and it has therapeutic benefits. That's essentially what they've done by buying a stake in this company. While the core of its cannabis operation consists of olarinab, an investigational oral full agonist of the cannabinoid type 2 receptor, which aims to treat patients with diseases affecting the stomach and intestine. As Arena's website states, olarinab is an investigational drug and is not currently approved for use by any health authority whatsoever. So they're paying $6.7 billion and justifying cannabis as a medicine in order to buy a company that is making zero money right now and has not been approved for any sort of medical use. Now, obviously, it seems like it's not going to go through unless they get approval. So clearly, I would say in the back end, Pfizer has reason to believe that Arena Pharmaceuticals is going to get this drug approved at some point in the future, because obviously that is required for this deal to go through. Just found that interesting, but again, this is $6.7 billion to buy a company making no money with one potential cannabis-based drug in the future. And so this is why, if you've been following my channel for a while, I own a company called Tetra Biopharma, and they're a Canadian biotech company that focuses on cannabinoid drug discovery. And they've got many drugs in their pipeline, and right now they're valued at a market cap of $50 million. But the reason I'm holding out on them as a lottery ticket, sort of one of those investments that I have, is the hopes that they might be bought out for $1 billion or $2 billion based on the pipeline that they have. That's the idea. So it does justify that, hey, at least pharmaceutical companies are acknowledging that there is medical benefit to cannabis. So just wanted to add that information as to, while providing some context on how these deals work, just based on my short 3 years of investing experience and watching them happen, because they are very rare, and that's what makes biotech a very high risk, high reward play. But if you get lucky and pick the right company, you can receive quite a nice payday from that cash injection. But just to scroll down and add a few things, because there was another deal in May 2021. So another example of this is global biopharmaceutical company Jazz Pharmaceutical completed the acquisition of GW Pharmaceuticals, the developer of Epidiolex, the first FDA-authorized CBD medicine for treating children with Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet syndromes. But like big tobacco companies, Big Pharma's interest in the medical cannabis industry grows with the space's fast-evolving cannabinoids industry, and clearly they see the medical benefits, and it's almost like they want to act sooner than the government, which is a bit ridiculous ridiculous, but obviously they've got an opioid epidemic to sort of fix on their hand and resolve, while R&D on cannabinoids is achieving exciting results in the treatment application. And for this reason, it is expected to see further involvement of pharmaceutical companies in the medical cannabis industry in the following years. And as someone that's been sort of against pharmaceuticals and, a fan of cannabis, I do not want to see this, but it is the reality that is likely going to happen. So the way I viewed it is we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but all we can do as investors is try to be mindful of the companies that we invest in. And let's say if they partner with a company that's done harm in the past, like a pharmaceutical company that has contributed to the opioid epidemic, you can always, sell your shares and move it to another company that's not going to partner with them. But while we got a reminder from hompZilla on Twitter, so just wanted to share this because it is a fact. Biden did campaign on descheduling cannabis, maybe not descheduling, rescheduling, but he did campaign on decriminalizing recreational cannabis, legalizing medical cannabis, and expunging prior convictions. So that is why, as investors, we were optimistic that something could get done last year. And there were either two outcomes. Something got done and we'd have been paid by now, or something hasn't gotten done, and so we're planning accordingly, still waiting to be paid. But my philosophy was not mine. It comes from Jason G. Wild, who's the executive chairman of TerraSend, but you can pay us now or you can pay us more later. And so just wanted to highlight this because this is the reality, which is why there's no reason for them not to take some victory in 2022 and focus on getting this done if they want to get reelected. But again, just to add to that, the support for cannabis is reaching new highs as all of this is happening. So again, no reason for them not to take this easy win to actually have chances of getting reelected, because as of right now, it doesn't look like they will. Well, just wanted to add, this is from third quarter 2021 revenues. We've got Curaleaf surpassing the 300 mark, Green Thumb over the 200, Trulieve over the 200. Now, obviously, this does not include Trulieve and Harvest, but we'll see that likely on the next earnings. Cresco, Verano, and Columbia Care. So while sales are climbing, the lack of action from the government really doesn't stop the state-led success story. So just wanted to bring that up to remind you that despite the price action, this is still likely a very plausible possibility in 2022 if the American politicians keep any of the promises that they've made to the American people. While I wanted to share this from the Dales report, just sort of highlighting more of the manipulation that can be done by hedge funds in Canada or the US that have the ability to do so, that us retail investors don't even realize or know that this is possible or can be happening. So just to highlight, CIBC 079 all over today's ask in the top MSOs today, as per usual, or MS, I'm not sure if he means MSOs or MSOs individually. At least 68 broker houses on the CSE's dealer directory and CIBC's 100 algo and others overrepresented again on over the sell book. So just to highlight, this is looking at Air Wellness, Curaleaf, Cresco Labs, and Trulieve, and we've got CIBC World Markets here. And so when we think of a market, we need a buyer and a seller, which is representative of the bid and the ask. The bid is the highest price that a buyer is willing to pay, and the ask is the lowest price that a seller is willing to sell. Now, so if we highlight here, CIBC World Markets, not saying that they're the ones doing the naked short selling, but they could be the brokerage for Canadian hedge funds that are, naked short selling through them, because from my understanding, naked short selling is legal in Canada, and that's where they can borrow shares at no cost and then just sell them in the open market, driving the price down, and then use that cash for whatever they want, and then eventually, close their short position when there's some sort of a catalyst in the US. Now, that's just from my best understanding, though. I've never worked for a hedge fund, so I'm just thinking out loud. If you do know more, let me know. But this is just another example of CIBC Markets as a brokerage allowing someone to continuously just sell at low prices. And so if you do know more about this or just want to add, please let me know in the comments, because I'm just trying to share this to add to why the price action has just been so rough. But again, as someone with a bit of experience in investing, I have studied Warren Buffett a lot as well, and valuations do always catch up to the fundamentals in time. The hardest part is having the patience to keep buying, especially if you don't have this first-hand experience yourself. But we've got some other stories, as Marijuana Moment reports that AOC calls on Biden to use executive authority on cannabis policy as president's agenda stalls on Congress. So as congressional Democrats fret over likely defeat of large-scale social spending bill after moderate Senator Joe Manchin announced over the weekend that he will oppose it, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is urging the president to start taking unilateral action on various progressive policies, including cannabis. I hope he will listen. As Biden needs to lean on his executive authority now, he has been delaying the and underutilizing it so far, she tweeted on Monday. There's an enormous amount he can do on climate, student debt, immigration, cannabis, healthcare, and more. Time is running out. We need to move and use alternative paths. And all he needs to do is deschedule cannabis. That's it. It'd be great if he also expunged records, but by descheduling it, no longer makes cannabis illegal. Therefore, anyone in jail, I'm pretty sure, would just for nonviolent drug offenses could be released because cannabis is no longer something that you go to jail for. So just to add, Ocasio-Cortez, who recently filed a bipartisan bill to incentivize state-level cannabis expungements, has been critical of Biden when it comes to cannabis. Even before he was elected, she told Cannabis Moment that his remarks on the campaign trail about cannabis as a potential gateway drug amounted to Reagan-era talking points, which is 100% true. The only thing that cannabis, due to the failure of U.S. policy, is a gateway to is our mass incarceration system. She said at the time, as the Congresswoman is among the first to suggest that Biden use executive authority to advance cannabis reform, joining 36 of her colleagues on a letter to the president in February that implored him to grant mass pardons to people with federal cannabis convictions. Biden recently reviewed a follow-up letter demanding a status update. It'd be great if he'd actually do something because he's certainly not displaying any sort of leadership right now. But so that's positive as the pressure is being added. However, I also want to report that Marijuana Moment highlights GOP lawmakers file bill to streamline research into cannabis, psychedelics, and other Schedule I drugs. Why don't you just remove cannabis from the Schedule I classification right away, and that would speed up the process for you. So although this is very frustrating to see because they will not do what the American people want, they want to stick to doing what they want and what their donors want them to do, Republican lawmakers in the House and Senate have introduced new legislation that would make it easier for scientists to research Schedule I drugs like cannabis and psilocybin. As companions filed this bill, Senator Bill Cassidy and Rep. Morgan Griffith largely reflect a plan that was recently released by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy with the backing of DEA. So again, not doing what the American people want, just descheduling the plant, but trying to streamline research while keeping it in the Schedule I classification so they keep the status quo alive while making it, feasible to study and then possibly publish studies that fit their best interests. It's very unfortunate, but I think this is why it's still best for the American people to make noise as loud as they can and still continue to call in and support descheduling the plant. While some other stories out of states, Montana prepares for January 1st launch of $325 million adult use cannabis use. So Montana's cannabis businesses are gearing up for scheduled January 1st launch of the nation's newest adult use program. So congrats, Montana, on getting this far, with major changes in store for how companies operate and concerns about shortages in a market projected to top $300 million in annual sales by 2025. The western state has a population of only 1.1 million, but substantial demand is expected to come from tourists. In 2020, 11.1 million people visited the state, according to University of Montana study. So that is positive, but good to see that Montana is on track to get going. As out of Ohio, cannabis activists submit signatures to force legislature to consider legalization, which is a big win. So congrats for the citizens of Ohio as well. The Coalition to Regulate Cannabis Like Alcohol said it turned in petitions with 206,943 signatures to the Secretary of State's office, more than required to get the legislature to act. This comes just 4 months after the campaign was initially cleared by the state to begin collecting signatures, and activists needed to collect 132,887 valid signatures from registered voters for the statutory initiative during this first phase of the effort. While if the signatures are verified by county officials, the legislature will then have 4 months to adopt the measure, reject it, or adopt an amended version. And if lawmakers do not pass the proposal, I don't understand why they wouldn't, because what does the will of the people in a democracy even mean any more than? Organizers will then need to collect an additional 132,887 signatures to place the proposal before voters on the ballot in November 2022. So all signs lead to that being there, as long as no lawmakers actually get in the way and stop the democratic process. So hopefully that can stay in there. While if we look at some companies, Trulieve expands patient access to medical cannabis with 8th Tampa area dispensary. Now I do not know the number this is, but this is a new Tampa Hillsborough location, and so they're happy to announce that, as always, all first-time guests are eligible for 50% new customer discount at any Florida-based locations, while Trulieve also offers statewide home delivery, convenient online ordering, and in-store pickup. As statewide on Tuesday, December 21, Trulieve will continue its 12 days of cannabis promotion with the launch of True Chocolate Dark Chocolate Cranberry and special one-day deals on brand partner Bangs Dark and Milk Chocolate Edibles. So this just highlights that Trulieve continues to execute despite the price action that we're seeing, because it really doesn't matter in the short term, while Curaleaf to open 4 new Florida dispensaries as well. So Curaleaf announces that the company continues to expand its footprint in one of the largest medical markets in the country. Happy to announce today's plan to open 4 new dispensaries in Florida by the end of this year. The expansion will increase the company's retail footprint to 42 dispensaries statewide and 117 across the country. So good job, Curaleaf. And as they announce this, they also announce that they've closed an additional $50 million private placement of 8% senior secured notes in the form of debt due 2026. So just wanted to add this. As I covered last week, they secured $425 million at 8%, which is another competing industry low, especially for an amount of interest that they're getting for their debt. But I think it's worth noting that today they announced this, that due to investor demand, because obviously they can't raise 50 more million if an investor is not willing to give them 50 million at 8%, the company has completed the offering of an additional allotment of 50 million aggregate principal amounts of its existing 8% senior secured notes due 2026. So if the investor demand is picking up, Boris has been saying often when he joins us on Spaces or when he does interviews that investors are picking up interest and they're starting to do their research. And as credit markets typically lead equity markets, maybe this is some sort of foreshadowing. But lastly, on to this one from Tilray to announce second quarter fiscal 2022 financial results on January 10th. So this will be one of the first of the LPs. Announced that the company will release the financial results for second quarter fiscal 2022 ended November 30th, 2021 before financial markets open on January 10th, 2022. So at least we have this to look forward to. However, it's also likely that we're not going to see MSO release their fourth quarter and full year fiscal earnings at least until March. So there's going to be some time in between there, but this will hopefully kickstart a little something, hopefully, for the Canadian LPs. Onto this news, as Thailand is going to completely legalize adult use plant-based cannabis in 2022. I think is great news, especially for their tourism industry, as just 4 years after becoming the first Southeast Asian country to legalize medical cannabis, Thailand is making moves to completely legalize all parts of the cannabis plant. So get this. Last week, the Thai government revised its narcotics code to acknowledge that cannabis and hemp roots, leaves, and stems are no longer illegal drugs. And next year, officials will expand this policy even further by completely removing all parts of the cannabis plant, including raw flower, from its list of banned narcotics. They've essentially just descheduled cannabis. It's as simple as that. If the Thai government can do it, why can't the American government get this done? It shouldn't be hard. What we have achieved so far is to declare that cannabis stems, roots, leaves, and sprigs are not drugs, said Anutin Charnvirakul, who is Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister and its Public Health Minister Vice reports. Starting next year, we will remove everything, stems, roots, sprigs, leaves, buds, flowers, and seeds from the narcotics list, as they should. So thank you, Thailand, for taking the lead. Hopefully the American government could learn from, the common sense policies that you guys are following. Now, lastly, just wanted to show you guys some visuals. As the more information that we know about cannabis plant, the better conviction we can have in investing in this industry for the long run. But this comes from David Bonnier, someone I don't follow, but just found this online, thought it was worth sharing. I love this chart. Shows the broad range of indication patients are using medical cannabis for versus the level of existing evidence. And highlighting that rising emerging evidence equals lower skepticism and stigma, which equals increased adoption rates, which then equals improved quality of life for millions of potential patients who choose cannabis because it's an alternative that they can access versus traditional pharmaceuticals. And so we just take a look, patient use of medical cannabis by indication versus level of existing evidence of efficacy. So we look from high to low, relative number of patients, low to high evidence or strength of evidence. So obviously the most evidence is for intractable epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, cancer-related nausea, appetite stimulation on wasting disorders, neuropathic pain, cancer-related pain, chronic pain, inflammatory bowel disorders. That looks like what Pfizer was buying into that arena pharmaceuticals for, while we have some of the less evidence but high use of people using it for anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, arthritis, PTSD, dementia, fibromyalgia, and others. So we do provide the source, which is Shlag AL 2021, Neuropharmacology, Current Controversies in Medical Cannabis, Recent Developments in Human Clinical Applications, and Potential Therapeutics. So I love sharing this just to highlight the reality of what this plant can do. And I just want to give a big shout out to any of the researchers or scientists out there that, despite the restrictions and difficulties, still continue to study this plant. Because without you, we wouldn't have gotten this far, and you were the real MVPs in the scientific community today. Because if lawmakers actually cared about saving American lives as opposed to just getting reelected, they would have descheduled cannabis a very, very, very long time ago. On to this one from Graham PV of Future Cashflow. He posts this for the culture. Now someone actually pointed out that growth generation looks incorrect, so he fixed it, and this is the one for the culture. But just want to highlight, this looks at top 10 MSOs by enterprise value and top 10 US listed cannabis issuers by enterprise value. So this includes Canadian LPs and ancillary companies like IIPR, which is a REIT, HYFM, I forget their name, but they are an ancillary company that sells products to grow cannabis, just like Grow Generation, and then the rest of them are Canadian LPs. So, but just to highlight on here, and if you've been watching my channel for some time and focusing on the fundamentals like any good long value investor should, you know that relative to each other, the US MSOs are much healthier fundamental companies than the Canadian LPs. And I don't want to include the US ancillary companies, just the LPs in this. And so if we compare the enterprise value to sales for 2021, 2022, 2023, for both, we can see that even LPs now, just based on the sell-off that they've seen recently, and MSOs are trading at a massive discount. But because of the fact that the MSOs are much financially healthier than the LPs, that's why I've chosen to try and go heavy into the MSOs, because I see a lot more upside investing in them than the LPs in the long run. But obviously the LPs are listed on US major exchanges, and so just the fact that they're on those exchanges and the dollar volume can be significantly more than what these MSOs are stuck with now in the OTC and CSE, it's possible that you can still make money investing in these. So it's a matter of you gaining experience by learning and then deciding which companies you think are going to do best in the long run. But just wanted to share this because I think it's a good visual, especially just one that I hadn't seen before. But this is another painful one that is true, and I want to share, the good with the bad, because we want to take it all in and just deal with it. But this is from James V. Baker. Food for thought. The following exhibit shows the percent increases needed from December 17th, 2021 closing prices of 37 fully integrated U.S. cannabis companies to get back to the highs they reached earlier in 2021. Now, this is painful to watch, and for me, my largest holding now, Cresco Labs, we've got to go up 162% to get there. Now, I don't own them at this price. I own them at much lower and in Canadian dollars, but still, it's still going to need at least 100% for Cresco to get back up for me. And while that's painful, and it might be painful for you, especially if you don't have experience in this industry, it's worth knowing that this industry is very cyclical, okay? And so that being said is that we'll see a run, then it'll fall back for quite some time, then the volume will come back when the bulls are ready to drive it up again to new all-time highs and to them some. So check any of the companies that you're invested in. I haven't sold any of my holdings, so I still have Tilt, quite a long ways to go back up. Goodness Growth, quite a long ways to go back. While Trulieve, not so much for myself, and that's really all I own for MSOs, but just wanted to share that because this is true. But for perspective, for just focusing on the fundamentals, now again, this is just the top 4 tier MSOs because it's a visual, but this is an easy visual to look at and see why I focus on the fundamentals is because despite the price action every single month from 2018 till now, they've been increasing their revenues while keeping their operational expenses at a low enough price to see, good profits in between what the revenue is and how much they're spending to get to this revenue. So I want to use that to highlight this, okay? Now this goes back from 2018 to 2019 to 2020 to 2021. And look how much money these companies were making in 2018, 2019. Less than 100 million, okay? So remember this in context. Because if we look at the American Cannabis Index, this is what we saw in the last year. And while I've showed this before, I do want to show it again just because we're getting deeper into the weeds, but I think that the further we fall, the closer we are to the eventual climb back, is that from March 2020 COVID lows, we ran all the way up to new all-time highs for many of the top MSOs. However, keep this in mind. The American Cannabis Operator Index did not even reach the all-time highs in February 2021 that it reached in July of 2019. And this would have been when the tier 1s and tier 2, tier 3s were making significantly less money per quarter than they are making now. And so this is why I do think that soon we will see a big run up, especially because the setup just seems like 2022 is the year where both parties are going to fight for who's going to legalize cannabis. I mean, it couldn't be set any better. But just to compare this to what happened in Canada in 2018 when we announced that we were going to legalize cannabis as well, 2016, 2017, 2018, and where I truly think the US cannabis is right here, where we've just gotten out of, is Canada circa 2017. And so I can share that just to highlight 2019 high, 21 second peak all-time highs, versus 2017 Canadian high, second peak, we come back down, then we see like a 30% run up, and then this is, I'm talking about the US, let's just say this last year. We've seen this 30% run up, little 30% jump, right? And that was when Nancy Mace announced the Republican bill. We've come back down, and then in Canada in 2017, this is when stuff started to get real good and we hit new all-time highs and even higher. And at this point, Canadian LPs were making like 20 million a quarter. And at the peak, Canopy was worth $25 billion, making $20 million a quarter. And so I just want to share that perspective with you. This is not advice. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is just why I have conviction and why I'm all in on this industry and I'm holding out for this, because I do think this is going to happen. If you think so, let me know in the comments why you also think so. And if you don't think so, also let me know. But I want to try and share this to connect all the ideas to give you as clear of a picture so that you can try and make any investment decisions based on what you've taught yourself from my videos and what you think is going to happen going forward. So hope that wasn't too much. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. But I just wanted to end this off with free cash flows. Great comp sheet. So again, thank you, Free Cash Flow, for making this free and accessible to everybody. And this just highlights the tier 1 US MSOs, the tier 2 US MSOs, the tier 3 ones, and the tier 4 ones, highlighting their current price, their full diluted shares outstanding, their market cap, their net debt, their enterprise value, which is their book value if they were to sell all of their assets versus all of their liabilities, the number of stores they have, and then it's their sales estimates for the years 2021, 2022, 2023, EBITDA estimates, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization of 2021, 2022, 2023, EBITDA margins into these 3 years, earnings per share, enterprise value divided by sales, enterprise value divided by EBITDA, and price to earnings for those that like generally accepted accounting principles. And so this is a great resource for anyone trying to figure out, if you haven't invested yet, where you can get the best bang for your buck right now. But again, best thing you can do is plan accordingly. I do not have any cash left to buy, unfortunately. If I did, I would continue to average down. However, the good news is that January is coming, and that is a new year, which means you will get a new $6,000 of contribution limit in your TFSA if you're Canadian, and you'll likely get another $6,000 of contribution limit in your Roth IRA if you are American. And for that reason, I have picked up some work lately so that I can start making some money and contribute another $6,000 as soon as possible in order to average down if we are lucky enough to see these prices in January. But hey, at this trend, we would think, yes, we're going to see these prices in January. But we never know, and this could change in an instant, as we've seen it happen in the past. It's just very difficult to be patient all the way through until it happens again. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.